bosses comparing inheritances on Gatsby's beach. My boss, Walter Chase, losing money at the roulette tables. Gossip columnists alongside gangsters and governors exchanging telephone numbers. Film stars, Broadway directors.
Have you ever walked into someone's house and thought, wait, haven't I seen this exact living room before? The beige couch, the minimalist coffee table book, a neutral toned throw blanket casually draped over the armrest. This aesthetic has become so common that it feels like we're all living in a giant, perfectly curated Pinterest board. But it's not just our homes. Look at fashion. Every influencer seems to be wearing the same muted, monochrome outfits. Brands have abandoned bold colors in favor of quiet luxury. Even coffee shops, restaurants, and product packaging have followed suit. Everything is designed to be sleek, neutral, and non-offensive. It's like we've collectively decided that beige is the safest, most aspirational color. But how did we get here? Minimalism and neutral aesthetics were once associated with luxury and timelessness, but somewhere along the way they became the default. What started as a high-end aesthetic trickled down into mainstream culture, shaping everything from our homes and wardrobes to social media branding and influencer aesthetics. The result, a world that feels increasingly uniform, where self-expression is traded for neutral, curated sameness. But is this shift towards beigification just a passing trend, or does it reveal something deeper about the way we live, consume, and express ourselves? In this video, we're going to unpack why beige has taken over and how economic downturns have historically pushed people towards minimal aesthetics, and the role of TikTok influencers and brands making beige the new standard. We'll also take a look back at past decades when bold color and maximalism thrived, and what that could mean for the future. Because history has shown us one thing: whenever society leans too far into uniformity, there's always a reaction. The question is, are we already seeing the first signs of a shift? Let's take a closer look. Thank you Testimol for sponsoring this video. I don't know about you, but when I have a few minutes to kill, I usually end up playing a game on my phone. Whether it's a puzzle, a strategy game, or just something mindless to pass the time. It's an easy way for me to unwind. But I recently found out that you can actually get paid for doing that. No weird gimmicks, just real rewards for playing games you'd probably be playing anyways. It's called Testimol, and honestly I wish I found it sooner, and let me show you how it works. Testimol is a super easy to use app that literally pays you for playing mobile games. And I mean real rewards like PayPal credit, Amazon gift cards, or discounts on your favorite brands. The process is simple. You first download the app, it's totally free on iOS and Android, then pick a game. Some games actually offer higher rewards than others, so if you're strategic, you can maximize your earnings. Once you download the game and start playing, Testimol tracks your achievements and rewards you with coins. When you have enough coins, you just head over to the payout tab and choose your reward. And the best part, there's something for everyone, whether you prefer cash, shopping discounts, or gift cards. And what I love about Testimol is that it introduces you to popular top-rated mobile games that you might have not tried otherwise. Plus, they have weekend and daily promotions, so you can collect even more coins on certain days, along with a huge variety of games from casual puzzles to full-on adventure games. And most importantly, it actually works. I tested it out myself, and yes, the payouts are real. If you're already playing games on your phone, why not make your screen time work for you? And it's true, sometimes when I'm bored in between like waiting for something, I just like bust out the game, and then I'm like, at least I'm like getting something in return, so it's not a complete waste. And seriously, this is the easiest way to turn gaming into rewards. Whether you're killing time in line at a coffee shop, winding down at night, Testimol lets you earn while you play. So click the link in my description or pinned comment to download Testimol now. Try it out, rack up rewards, and let me know in the comments below what you end up cashing out for. Now let's jump back into the main video. Chapter 1. Why is everything beige? The rise of neutral aesthetics. Walk into almost any modern home, scroll through social media, or browse the latest fashion collections, and you'll notice one thing. Color has all but disappeared. Instead, a sea of beige, taupe, cream, and muted earth tones dominates our surroundings. Interior designs, fashion, and branding have all leaned into a neutral, minimalist aesthetic, creating a world where self-expression is often replaced by carefully curated sameness. But how did beige become the default? And why does it feel like everywhere we turn, we're seeing the same muted palette? Nowhere is this beigeification more apparent than in home design. What once were vibrant, eclectic, and deeply personal spaces have now been reduced to a formulaic Airbnb aesthetic: clean white walls, neutral tone furniture, and strategically placed ceramic vases. This style, often seen in luxury hotels and high-end homes, has trickled down into mainstream culture, shaping the way people decorate their living spaces. A major reason for the shift is the rise of home staging for social media and resale value. Rather than designing homes that reflect individual personalities, many people are now decorating with resale and marketability in mind. Neutral colors photograph well, making homes appear more polished and aspirational on Instagram, Pinterest, and Zillow listings. Because of this, personality-driven interiors, think of colorful wallpaper, bold furniture, or maximalist decor, have fallen out of favor in exchange for more uniform, market-friendly aesthetics. I mean, I'm all about like floral wallpaper and like vintage paintings, but I don't know, I get it for resale value that maybe it wouldn't work. Fashion has undergone a similar transformation. The once vibrant and varied street style of the early 2000s has given way to a minimalist neutral wardrobe popularized by trends like the clean girl aesthetic, quiet luxury, and Scandinavian minimalism. Instead of bright colors and statement pieces, the ideal wardrobe is now built around monochrome sets, tailored neutrals, and understated elegance. The success of brands like Skims, the Rhode, and Zara have only reinforced the idea that beige is sophisticated, skin-tone basics, and minimalist shapewear as the foundation of every wardrobe. Meanwhile, quiet luxury is a trend that favors understated, logo-free pieces, which has further pushed the idea that true elegance is about blending in rather than standing out. And the goal is to look effortlessly put together without any flashy details, which has led to a cultural shift where expressiveness in fashion is often equated with being trying hard or out of touch. Social media plays a huge role in reinforcing this aesthetic. Platforms like Instagram and Pinterest reward visual cohesion, which means that neutral, desaturated feeds tend to perform better than bold, chaotic ones. The algorithm favors aesthetic consistency, and because influencers and brands tailor their content for engagement, the result is homogenized, beige-dominated digital landscape. This extends beyond personal style and interior design. Brands have also embraced beigification as a marketing strategy. Think about how many coffee shops, skincare brands, and direct-to-consumer products now follow the same design philosophy: minimalist packaging, neutral tones, and clean, modern typography. Even once playful brands have stripped away their colorful branding to appear more high-end and grown-up. This strategy creates an illusion of quality and sophistication, but it also means that many brands are becoming indistinguishable from one another. The shift towards neutral aesthetics wasn't random. It was a reaction to economic, social, and technological changes. The rise of social media, the gig economy, and shifting consumer habits have all played a role in making beigeification the new normal. In times of uncertainty, people crave order, simplicity, and timeless design, which makes neutrals an easy choice. But as history has shown us, aesthetic trends have always been cyclical. While beige may dominate now, the question remains, how long before people start rebelling against this monotonous beige? Chapter 2, the economic side. Why minimalism rises in times of uncertainty. Minimalism isn't just an aesthetic choice, it's a response to economic and social uncertainty. Historically, whenever the world faces a financial crisis, recessions, or cultural instability, there's a tendency to retreat into simplicity, restraint, and practicality. It's a cycle we've seen play out time and time again. Moments of excess followed by a sharp pivot to understated, timeless design. While today's beigeification may seem like a purely stylistic movement, it's actually part of a much larger pattern. From Art Deco opulence to the Great Depression's restraint, a century ago, the Roaring Twenties were a celebration of excess and glamour and bold self-expression. This was the era of Art Deco design, where interiors were dripping with glittering gold, geometric patterns, and deep jewel tones. People indulged in luxury, jazz clubs were lively, and fashion was all about making a statement. Think flapper dresses, sequins, and extravagant accessories. But this high-flying era came to an abrupt halt with the Great Depression. By the 1930s, economic devastation forced people to rethink their spending habits. Suddenly, loud and excessive displays of wealth were considered tone-deaf, and a new aesthetic of practicality and simplicity took over. Homes became muted and functional. Design emphasized durability over flair. And even fashion shifted towards subtle, long-lasting pieces in neutral tones. It wasn't just about money, it was about survival. People wanted to project an image of modesty and responsibility rather than indulgence. This shift is eerily similar to what we're seeing today. Just as Art Deco excess was replaced by Depression-era practicality, the bold aesthetics of the early 2000s, from flashy Y2K fashion to neon-filled club interiors, have now been replaced with muted minimalism and neutral aesthetics. Once again, economic instability is pushing us towards restraint, practicality, and an aversion to anything that feels too bold or wasteful. The aftermath of World War II brought another major aesthetic reset. After years of wartime shortages and rationing, people longed for stability and order, leading to the rise of mid-century modern design. Unlike the ornate decorative styles of previous decades, this new movement was all about clean lines, functionality, and neutral palettes. People weren't chasing extravagance. They wanted homes and products that felt practical and long-lasting. This era also introduced the idea of mass-market minimalism, a design philosophy that would later become a global standard for mainstream aesthetics. Homes were no longer filled with elaborate decorations, but rather streamlined, functional furniture that blended seamlessly into the space. Even in fashion, silhouettes became simpler, color palettes toned down, and a sense of understated elegance took over. And the post-war period shows us that when people experience instability, they gravitate towards aesthetics that feel reliable and timeless. The same pattern is reflected in today's obsession with quiet luxury and the idea of investment pieces, a reaction to economic unpredictability and a desire to project financial stability. Fast forward to 2008 and the financial crisis, and we see yet another wave of economic anxiety driving aesthetic choices. The crash not only reshaped the way people spent money, also how they presented themselves visually. Before the recession, the 2000s were filled with over-the-top consumerism, flashy logos, designer it bags, bold branding, and maximalist aesthetics. But as soon as the economy collapsed, flaunting wealth felt inappropriate. People began embracing stealth wealth, wearing designer pieces that were unbranded, discreet, and understated. This was the era of normcore, a fashion movement that rejected excess in favor of basic, neutral clothing that looked intentionally unremarkable. Instead of standing out, the goal was to blend in, and the shift happened in design, with Apple's sleek minimalist branding becoming aspirational. Suddenly, all-white interiors, bare countertops, and capsule wardrobes became the new standard of good taste. The 2008 crisis proved that minimalism isn't just about aesthetics, it's about projecting financial security in times of uncertainty. When the economy is unstable, people don't want to be seen as reckless spenders. Instead, they opt for timeless neutral pieces that signal stability, which is exactly what we're seeing again today. The pandemic brought one of the biggest economic and cultural disruptions in modern history, and just like that, it sparked a shift towards restraint and minimalism. In the wake of mass layoffs, inflation, and global uncertainty, people once again turned to safe, neutral aesthetics. This time, the shift manifested as quiet luxury, an aesthetic that values quality over branding, subtlety over boldness, and longevity over trendiness. Unlike the loud, logo-heavy luxury of the past, today's wealthy elites are dressing in subtle, beige-toned ensembles that whisper rather than shout. Instead of status symbols like designer bags with bold logos, the new marker of wealth is a perfectly tailored, neutral-toned outfit that looks effortlessly expensive. The Airbnb-ification of interior spaces, as people spent more time at home and wanted their surroundings to feel calm, orderly, and clutter-free, the result of flooded beige, white, and muted earth tones, designed to create a sense of serenity in an unpredictable world. Minimalism sells itself as an investment, something timeless, long-lasting, and unfussy, but history shows us that no aesthetic is truly timeless. Just as past generations rejected the restraint of previous eras in favor of bold self-expression, it's only a matter of time before people grow tired of today's beige uniformity. While neutral tones may feel safe and sophisticated now, they can also feel sterile, uninspired, and forgettable. If history tells us anything, it's that whenever culture leans too far into restraint, a backlash follows. The question is, are we already seeing the first signs of maximalism making a return? And I've never been a huge fan of minimalism. I'm probably more of a hoarder at heart, as you can tell by my background. But I've stayed in hotels and places where it is clean and minimal, and it does feel nice, but I don't know if I decorate like that. Chapter 3, the pop cultural effect. Why influencers and brands keep pushing beige. In the age of social media, trends don't just emerge organically, they are strategically curated, marketed, and reinforced by influencers and brands. The rise of beige as the dominant aesthetic didn't happen by accident. Instead, it has been propelled by the influencer economy, social media algorithms, and the marketing tactics of major brands, all of which favor a neutral, polished, and inoffensive visual identity. Scroll through social media, TikTok, and Instagram, and you'll notice striking sameness among influencers' homes. Regardless of the personal style or background, many content creators seem to live in variations of the same neutral minimalist space. White walls, beige furniture, wooden accents, and a carefully placed diptych candle or ceramic vase with dried pampas grass. The look is clean and modern and perfectly Instagrammable. This trend is not just about personal preference, it's about what performs well online. A beige neutral tone interior is easy to photograph, doesn't clash with different outfits or branding partnerships, and creates a cohesive aspirational aesthetic that resonates with social media audiences. For influencers, their home is not just a living space, it's a content backdrop, a place designed for sponsorships, brand partnership, and online engagement. And what's the result? A world where individuality takes a backseat to algorithm-friendly aesthetics. Bright colors, eclectic decor, and personal quirks are often sacrificed in favor of a neutral, universally appealing backdrop that blends in rather than stands out. To me, that seems so boring, kind of depressing. Perhaps no brand has done more to push the neutral aesthetic into the mainstream than Skims, Kim Kardashian's shapewear and loungewear empire. From the beginning, Skims rebranded beige as sexy and chic, shifting the perception of neutral tones from boring to aspirational. Before Skims, shapewear was often hidden beneath clothing, but Kim Kardashian made it the main event. Her collections feature a range of skin tone basics and muted monochromatic hues, designed to be minimalist yet luxurious. The brand's massive success influenced other fashion labels to follow suit, pushing a wave of neutral activewear, lingerie, and streetwear into the mainstream. This shift extended beyond clothing. Kim Kardashian's own home, famously designed in a stark, ultra-minimalist style, became a blueprint for aspirational living. Kind of reminds me of that new Adrian Brody movie where he won the Oscar for. Sorry, I'm drawing a blank, but he had that minimalist, like Bauhaus architecture style, and that kind of reminds me of Kim Kardashian's house. And the beige interiors, the lack of visible clutter, and the soft monochrome palette, it all signaled wealth, refinement, and a level of perfection that just felt out of reach for the average person. Oh, the movie's The Brutalist, now I remember. Anyways, it is a good movie, you should watch it. As a result, countless influencers, brands, and consumers adopted the same aesthetic, reinforcing the idea that beige equaled luxury. A major reason beigification has taken over is because it performs well on social media. All these platforms prioritize content that's cohesive and shareable and aesthetically pleasing, which often translates to muted neutral tone visuals. For example, Pinterest boards filled with minimalist beige interiors generate higher engagement because they create a calm aspirational mood that people want to replicate. Likewise, Instagram influencers curate the feeds to look polished and uniform, avoiding bright clashing colors. Even brands adjust to this marketing strategy. Many companies rebranded their packaging and storefronts to align with this neutral aesthetic, removing bold logos, toning down color schemes, and embracing minimalist typography. The goal is to appear high-end and timeless, but the consequence is that everything starts looking the same. And it's true, when you look at apartments for rent online, all the interiors look exactly the same, like same cupboard, same bathrooms. What started as luxury-inspired trend has now become the new normal. Influencers, brands, and social media have created an echo chamber of beige, where everything outside of this aesthetic feels jarring and unremarkable. The emphasis on neutral, curated spaces and wardrobes has shaped the way we perceive style, success, and personal identity. But is this obsession with beige truly about timeliness, or is it just another hyper-curated trend that will inevitably fade? While influencers and brands have made beige feel inescapable, history suggests that when aesthetic uniformity becomes too dominant, a backlash is bound to follow. So the question is, are we reaching that tipping point? Chapter 4, a look back when culture embraced color and maximalism. History has shown us that bold, expressive design always makes a comeback, and it often does so after long periods of aesthetic restraint. Culture moves in cycles, with each generation reacting against the visual monotony of the one before. In the past, we have seen entire eras defined by their embrace of color, pattern, and individuality, often as a rebellion against the dullness of minimalism. From the earthy, textured homes of the 70s to the neon-soaked extravagance of the 80s and the playful chaos of the early 2000 Y2K aesthetics, history reminds us that when a trend dominates dominates for too long, people eventually push back. The 1970s were a response to the sterile and rigid aesthetics of the post-war era. After decades of clean, safe interiors and structured designs, people crave warmth and personality, and I really do love the 70s aesthetics, to be honest, like all the colored appliances and like earthy tones and floral patterns. Homes were filled with deep, rich colors like burnt orange, avocado green, mustard yellow, and dark brown. There was textured fabrics such as velvet, shag carpets, and macrame wall hangings added layers of depth and creating spaces that felt lived in and expressive rather than staged and curated. Unlike the modern obsession with resale value and perfectly coordinated interiors, 1970s home design was about individual taste. It was a time when people decorated with personal flair, whether their living rooms looked Instagrammable. Beyond interiors, fashion also reflected the shift towards warmth and boldness. The hippie movement influenced clothing with flowing fabrics, intricate patterns, and an overall rejection of clean-cut, tailored styles. This was the era that embraced imperfection, eclecticism, and personality over conformity. Then came the 1980s, an era that took maximalism to a new level. If the 70s has been about earthy self-expression, the 80s were about wealth, power, and excess. Everything became bigger, louder, and more dramatic. Fashion was defined by bright neon colors, oversized silhouettes, sequins, and metallic fabrics. Logos became status symbols, with designers like Versace and Chanel turning their branding into wearable statements. Home design also reflected the shift. Instead of warm, organic tones of the 70s, the 80s introduced bold color blocking, glass, and chrome accents, and almost a theatrical approach to interior decorating. Black lacquer furniture, pastel Miami Vice-inspired interiors, and geometric patterns became the new markers of wealth and style. The mantra of this era was clear: more was more. In stark contrast to today's quiet luxury movement, where being subtle is prized, the 80s were about flaunting status in the loudest way possible. This embrace of maximalism was a direct rejection of minimalist tendencies that preceded it, proving once again that when culture became too uniform, people craved boldness and individuality. And by the late 90s and early 2000s, culture took a chaotic high-energy turn. The Y2K era was defined by playfulness, artificiality, and a complete disregard for being subtle. It was the age of metallics, rhinestone, and holographic fabrics. Fashion was chaotic with clashing colors, low-rise jeans, and everything was bedazzled. Unlike today's neutral, carefully curated branding, the early 2000s were a golden age of fun and loud and highly recognized visual identities. Brands leaned into bright typography, excessive packaging, in-your-face marketing that felt like an explosion of personality. Interiors reflected this energy as well. Think inflatable furniture, lava lamps, beaded curtains, and novelty decor that had no real function beyond being fun to look at. It was a time of experimentation, a rejection of streamlined minimalism that had started creeping in during the 1990s. If the 80s had been about luxury, the Y2K era was about youthful energy, hyper-commercialized aesthetics, and an embrace of digital age glossy, futuristic look. And looking at these past decades, a pattern becomes clear. Each of these maximalist eras was a direct response to the aesthetic uniformity of the previous one. The earthy lived in chaos of the 70s rejected the sterility of mid-century modernism, and the excessive high-powered glamour of the 80s broke away from the soft, organic aesthetics of the 70s, and the playful, artificial world of Y2K fashion was a reaction to the clean, neutral minimalism of the 90s. These shifts show us that culture never stays in one place for too long. Once the aesthetic becomes too dominant, it starts to feel restrictive rather than aspirational, and people begin to crave the opposite. And that brings us to today. After years of neutral interiors, minimalist branding, and the rise of quiet luxury, we are seeing the early signs of rebellion. Gen Z's love for vintage maximalism, the resurgence of Y2K fashion, and TikTok's embrace of bold color aesthetics all suggest that people are beginning to push back against Beigeification. If history repeats itself, we may be on the brink of a new era defined by color, personality, and outright rejection of uniformity that has taken over. And the only question is, how bold will the next wave of rebellion be? Chapter 5 is Beigeification a fad, and what comes next? Trends are never permanent, and what feels like a dominant aesthetic of an era will eventually be replaced by something entirely different, often a reaction against it. While Beigeification has had a strong hold over interior design, fashion, and branding for a decade, cracks are beginning to form. People are growing tired of sameness and perfection, and the pressure to curate a timeless aesthetic. Instead, a new movement is emerging, one that embraces imperfection, color, and individuality. The rise of maximalism, eclecticism, and digital rebellion signals that Beigeification may not be as timeless as it claims to be. Gen Z is leading the charge by rejecting the beige minimalist aesthetic that was so beloved by millennials. millennials. Unlike the millennial obsession with Scandinavia-inspired minimalism, think perfectly staged homes and all those monochromatic outfits and sleek uniform branding, Gen Z is drawn to aesthetic chaos, individuality, and nostalgia. I feel like I never really fit into the whole millennial wanting the minimalism thing, and their approach to fashion and interior design is less about cohesion and uniformity and more about personal expression and eclecticism. Instead of obsessing over investment pieces in neutral tones, they're thrifting vintage furniture, mixing bold patterns, and embracing intentional mismatch of eras and influences. I feel like that's kind of me, to be honest, and the dominance of curated beige aesthetics is beginning to feel outdated rather than aspirational. One of the earliest signs of beigeification is beginning to lose its hold is the return of the 2000s. The Y2K revival is more than just a passing trend, it's a full-scale rejection of the muted tones, understated fashion, and the idea that a capsule wardrobe was the ultimate goal. And the return of bright colors, chaotic layering, and playful experimental styling in both clothing and interiors suggests that a shift is already happening. Unlike the carefully polished neutrals that have dominated the past decade, Y2K fashion embraces fun, excess, and self-expression, proving that there's a growing appetite for something bolder or more dynamic. Beyond fashion and interior design, there's another force working against beigeification: algorithm fatigue. For years, social media has rewarded the neutral aesthetic and the cohesive feeds, favoring influencers whose branding fits this clean aesthetic. But now people are growing tired of seeing the same thing over and over, which is true, and a growing number of influencers are embracing the more messy, colorful, and imperfect aesthetic, breaking away from the ultra-curated feeds from the past. And TikTok has played a massive role in the shift, as more casual, unfiltered formats are allowing for a wide range of aesthetics to flourish. Unlike Instagram, where everything is kind of in a cohesive grid-like feed where you can scroll down, TikTok rewards authenticity and creativity, which has allowed more diverse styles and aesthetics to gain traction. While beige isn't disappearing overnight, history tells us that when an aesthetic reaches its point of oversaturation, it starts to decline. And we're already seeing this, people pushing back against the uniformity of neutral aesthetics, whether it's through different fashion choices, vibrant interior trends, or the shift towards something more dynamic and unpredictable. And the question isn't if beige will fall out of favor, it's when. And if the past is any indication something louder, bolder, more expressive is coming next. Beigeification isn't a design choice, it's a reflection of economic anxiety, influencer culture, and branding tactics. But as we've seen throughout history, aesthetic movements don't last forever. So is beige here to stay, or are we on the edge of another colorful renaissance? I feel like it's just all like the Kardashians in many ways, because I feel like I really started noticing the beigeification when I with her skincare brand, and then the whole Skims thing, and then when she showed her house, that cold, concrete, minimalist look. So let me know in the comments below, do you love this look, or are you wanting a return to more bolder, expressive aesthetics? So if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more explorations into the past, present, and future of culture. So thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your design style is. I'm always curious how other people like to decorate. All right, thanks for watching.